Hey there. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about trust, both trusting the players and trusting the DM, basically just overall trust, and a little bit about just adventure design, I guess I'm going to say. So I'm Daniel. This is my channel, Bandit's Keep. Welcome. We do a lot of live plays here, and I'm doing videos like this a little more often, talking about rules, my thoughts about how we play the game, mostly OSR type games, but sometimes I'll delve into other things. So this comes out, there's a few things that kind of these always come from that place, right? Where you're on some forums here, it's something happens there, and it kind of comes together. And very specifically, two things kind of triggered this in me. Three, really. One was this morning. I saw a post on the Dungeon Crawl Classics forum, and somebody was saying their new DM judge, as it would be, and they're like, okay, so I did all the things and I made a spreadsheet and I already pre-rolled my initiative and did all these other things, to prep. What else should I do? And a lot of people, especially on DCC, were basically like, yeah, draw all that away. Like you need to be looser and this kind of thing. And I think there is that like standing on high and being like, you should improv. I'm not talking about that, but the idea that like, if the more you plan, so my response to it was, well, if you already rolled initiative for the monsters, you're basically guaranteeing a fight. Like you're in your mind, you have in your mind there's going to be a fight there, so you're stepping into it with that in mind. I prefer to look at it like when something happens, what's been going on? What have the players been doing? What's the feel of the session so far? Where are we going with it? And make those decisions then. I never want to predetermine that something is a combat. Yeah, there's going to be times. Granted, yeah, if they're invading a lair and there's guards, then you're going to probably have a combat there. But that's not necessarily true either. They could convince them, they could charm them, they could sneak past. There's lots of things that they could do, and by locking yourself into this, like I've already rolled their initiative, I think just mentally you're going to go for combat there. So this comes down to so this rolls back to the idea of like over planning, in my opinion, the story. Now, I'm not talking about over planning the adventure. You need to know your adventure. You need to know what the monsters are and what's going on. You need to know your rule set. I'm not saying you should walk in with no adventure and just be like, "What do you guys want to do?" and then make it up from scratch. Yeah, you could do that, but that's not what I mean by keeping it open ended or trusting the players. And the other thing that kind of made me really decide to make the video was I've been running Coriolis on Mondays, which I have to tell you, it's really fun. If you guys haven't been watching that, great players. Um, I'm sorry, Freely or whoever does that. This campaign is terribly set up. It's just really bad, and there's so many things in it that I don't like. I love the theme. I love what's going on. I love the actual story. But there's so many places in the adventure where it's like, don't let the PCs do this. If the PCs try to do this to stop them. No, I'm not going to do that. That's exactly what I hate about pre-made things. It's the reason why I don't play, and I'm not saying all board games like this. I don't play board games and video games that have these like things that block you from doing certain things. It's a role-playing game. Anything could happen. So I don't like that. And then kind of the icing on the cake was I was just in a Call of Cthulhu game and it was really great. It just started in a campaign. I've been put on record many times saying I do not like Call of Cthulhu, mostly because the adventures are just like that. And I know people are going to tell me in the comments that they're not. I've played in dozens of Call of Cthulhu official, scenarios. They are all like this. They need to funnel you into this like thing where you're going to go insane or whatever at the end. So it's very much a railroad, and that's okay. I mean, it kind of has to be, right? There's only so many clues that they can give the keeper in that case. So it's like they can't just randomly, make stuff up. They need to have the players find these clues, and I understand that. But it's just very classic of that system to take away the agency of the player to play their character. And what I want to talk about here is the idea that it's not so much that they take away their agency, but that it's designed in a way that they don't trust the players. See, in my mind, I'm in a horror game, right? I am in a horror game. I am playing a regular person that doesn't know much about Cthulhu, whatever. I've read the stories, right? So I mean, me personally, so I know how people react when they see those things, right? When I'm in that game and I see a weird eldritch monster, I don't go, I grab a table leg and bash it over the head. I run or go insane or scream, or because that's what a character in that story will do. And as a player, that's my job to do that. And as the keeper, it's your job to trust that I will do that because we have this right. This contract, right? This contract, as they say, right? That the social contract. We know we're playing Call of Cthulhu, right? We're not playing uh, Dungeons and Dragons. Let's say we're not playing whatever. We're playing a certain kind of game that has a certain kind of theme. And when you're playing that game and you are playing those kind of characters, or you're running that kind of game, you should keep within a certain thing in the genre. Right? You play the genre. That's what we're doing. That's the game, right? But modules, pre-written adventures specifically don't trust like that the players are going to do that. So they tell the GMs, don't let them do this. This is going to happen. They have to make this crazy saving throw or else they're going to do this. And it's like, why? Why is that necessary? Why not just say to the players, hey, listen, this thing is so shocking, you've never seen it, and let them react to it. Let them take from it your description and act in the way that they should. And I did mention this after the game, and in a conversation, I wasn't trying to be negative, and one of the other players was like, well, my player wouldn't have done the thing then. And I was like, that's fine then. Why do they have to? Like, having the one person that doesn't do the crazy thing is probably even cooler than the fact that everybody does it, right? Because that creates tension in the party, it creates tension in the story. This is the thing, right? You're here to play the game, right? And this is the game. If you there was this okay, this is a weird so there's an episode of The Office, if you've seen the show The Office, where what's his name, Michael, I think, is the boss there. He's in an improv class. There might be many episodes where he's in this class. I don't know, I didn't watch all the episodes, and then he just keeps doing this thing where his character always just pulls out a gun, and he basically ruins the scene every time because they're doing some kind of a scene and he pulls out a gun. And so, like, yeah, if your players are like that, then to me that requires an off the table discussion, or out of the game discussion, and be like, hey, that's not the theme here, right? We're playing dark horror, and your character is a cartoon, and you just don't do that. It's not the theme we're going for. If you want to play in a game like that, maybe we'll run that next campaign if people are into it. But play it with the themes that we're doing here, so that the whole game goes. That's a trust, right? It's everybody at the table is part of this. But again, you can do that when you write your own things. Like if I write my own scenarios, I don't put in there, oh, the players have to blah, blah. I trust that they're going to do that. And I instill the themes by how I describe things. And also when we're making characters, that's where like session zeros come in. And that doesn't even need to be a session zero. Like I know people talk about session zero a lot because I run a lot of one shots, right? So we don't always have session zero, but you write a little blurb about what's going on. And believe me, if you don't write that blurb, they won't follow any kind of construct because everybody will come with their own mind. I ran this game and it was really fun because it actually ended up being really, really silly. But I ran this game where they were vampires. They were space vampires. Basically, the idea was that they were being I don't know if that's recorded or not. It might be on the channel somewhere. They're being transported. All the vampires were taken from Earth and they were being transported to a new planet. There was like a deal made with the government of the world. And of course they got screwed, and that wasn't the case. And they wake up like hundreds of years later and they're like in space. So like I just said, everybody's a vampire, and every one of the players has a different idea of what a vampire is. Somebody was the suave vampire. One of the players was playing, he was like the Count from Sesame Street. Somebody was a sparkly vampire, maybe. I don't know. Like I can't remember exactly what they were, but it was just really funny because I didn't instill that theme. But because it was a gonzo adventure, it worked, right? So I still I didn't correct them and tell them no. I went with it, right? Because I saw that each person introducing the vampire was getting a little bit weirder, and I was like, all right, this is where this is going. And I didn't say up front, hey, this is dark Dracula, so that's on me. The players are there to play, I'm there to run, so let's make this happen. And we had a fantastic, super fun game, right? And the idea is I trusted that the players would take it somewhere fun with what they were doing. And if you're running a game, you should trust that your players will go with what you do if you project it out there in a manner that's clear, obviously. And players, you should trust that the GM is not going to screw you over. Now, I have not really had bad. I've had handful of games where it hasn't been great. But I played RPGs when I was a kid with my friends, and we all had a good time. And I don't know, people tell crazy stories about when they were 10 and 12 and 13 and doing these things and being murder hobos, and we didn't play like that. I don't know, we were weird. But I hear all these stories, especially of people who played like in like college ages and like in their 20s and stuff back in the day, where like in like the editions where like GMs were just out to kill them and they were just jerks. I never played with those people, so I don't have that negative thing. And I think there's all these like memes and stuff online that instill that in people, that like you can't trust the GM. And in fact, the rule systems themselves now don't trust the GM, right? If you play something like 5th edition, the rules are so out front, right, that you can literally have a conversation with the GM about like, no, that's not how my spell works. And you literally can, for the most part, prove one way or the other by looking at the text, because it's so clear and they're so precise. Whereas if you look at like OD&D or BX, it's super vague. Like I think the original Charm Person spell says something like, if they fail their saving throw, they fall under your influence. What the hell does that mean, right? So it's like, as the game kept going, I guess because of bad apples, people have become less and less trusting of the DM, GM, whatever you call it, the players, right? The GMs don't trust the players, so they need to force them in one direction to make sure they don't go off the script. Who cares if they go off the script, right? And the players are nervous the GM is going to somehow kind of trying to screw them. And I can tell you right now, if you're a player watching this and you think that just because you know the rules that the GM can't screw you, the GM can always screw you if they really want to. It doesn't matter, right? They'll just use something that's in the rules that's more powerful than you. I mean, they can pick anything they want. There's nothing, so you need to have this trust, right? So if I'm the GM and I'm like, okay, this weird thing is happening, and your characters are probably going to get a little bit, it's like it's making them drunk, or then you should play into that, because you should trust that I, as a GM, I am on your side in a sense. I'm trying to build this story with you, and I want you to have a great time, right? And as a player, as a GM, I should say, I should trust that when I tell my players these things, that they will do, within reason, the right thing. That's not to say you can't ever throw a Charmed Person on somebody or do those things or throw a doppelganger in the party. That's all super fun. But my point being is that when you only run pre-made adventures, and they're all like this, by the way. So I have not run every adventure, but like I said, I've been in numerous Call of Cthulhu adventures. They're all like this. This Coriolis adventure is like this. 5e adventures, I have several of them that I've read, I've run, and I played in Strahd. They're all like that, right? Pathfinder. People send me these Pathfinder adventure paths, like, you should read this, is the best adventure ever. To me, it's not. It's telling you. It's like, I remember reading them going, hold on, it's telling me as the GM exactly what the goblins are going to do each round. I don't want that, right? I want to imagine that. I want to do that myself. But what it does to people is this. It's kind of like when I talked about the more options is less options. If you come up learning that this is how adventures are, and that you need to make sure the players do the exact thing and don't give them the chance to do this, and everything's pre-scripted, and when you go in this room, these goblins and on round 3 are going to climb the chandelier, and then this one over here is going to do this with his sword, you'll think that's how the game should be run. Whereas I believe that the game should be much looser than that. I think that you have your people in the world, I was going to say bad guys, but enemies, maybe to the player characters, maybe not. They have their reasons for doing things. The PCs have their reasons for doing things. In the most basic sense, if you're playing like a kind of a traditional BX game, the B part of it anyways, and you're just dungeon crawling, you're going into lairs of monsters to recover treasure. Some people look at it like, oh, you're stealing their treasure. Maybe the monsters stole the treasure from the people and you're getting it back. I mean, you could look at it a lot of different ways, right? But in either case, that's your motivation, right? You're going in there to get treasure and not die, and they're protecting the treasure they have, and that's it. So they're going to act in accordance, right? So maybe if a party of 6 PCs comes in on 3 goblins, those goblins are not going to fight to the death because they know they can't win. They'll say, hey, listen, why don't we make a deal? We'll give you, some of this treasure, and we'll tell you where there's some more treasure, right? If you let us keep some of it and you leave without killing us, right? And they make that deal with the party. Now, I didn't have to roll initiative, right? And that was, to me, a much more interesting scene. And of course, later on, because goblins are, generally chaotic, they're probably going to get more goblins together and go after the PCs, right? For revenge. Because of course you can't trust them, right? But at the same time, if the PCs even though there's only 3 goblins, there is a chance that one of them might die. So they might take half the gold and a treasure map and be happy to walk away without that problem. So you need to trust that the players are going to do something interesting. The players need to trust that the GM will play along if they try. And if you do that, I think you'll have a much more fluid and interesting game. Again, I'm not saying that having a path, a certain goal is bad, or that they shouldn't do that. Of course they should, right? I'm saying GMs. You can create an adventure, right? Maybe your adventure is to get the magic item that's in the bottom of the dungeon. So of course that's going to send them in a certain direction, right? But after that, how they do it, that's completely up to them and you. And that story happens at the table. Both sides need to trust that the other side is trying to create a great story together through the game mechanics, through the interactions, through what people do. And by working together, right, you will do that. That's basically it. No one side is more important, right? The GM or referee or keeper or whatever game you're playing is a player. And they're running the monsters, but they also want to have a good time. They want to have a great story. They want people to come back. So they're going to run something that people are going to enjoy. Hopefully, right? And the players, ideally, are not jerks. And if they are, then they should be gone from your table, right? They should play along, right? One more example before I know it's getting long, but classic dungeon example, right? You go into a dungeon and there's like levers and switches and stuff on the wall. Why would you ever throw those? You'd never throw those. Like no sane person is going to throw switches and levers in a dungeon. But of course you do it as a character, right? Because that's part of the fun of it. It's like, whoa, what's down here? We're adventuring. We're trying to see what it is. You can't play the game in a way that you have to be afraid of everything. You have to be willing to go into that adventuring spirit that you would do that, right? And gyms, you got to give players kind of stuff what they want. Like you have to look at it like this. Like if you started off and you were like, okay, this is kind of my plan. I think the players are going to do blah blah, or I want the players to do this and that. This is what I think is the plot, or however you want to say it. And then the players just go in a different direction. It's like that classic meme where it's like, oh, I spent all this plot stuff and the players were over here wasting their time with this NPC. Well, guess what? If they like that NPC, that's the story. No matter what you spend time building before, that's the story. And if you really need them to get over here, use that NPC that they like to get them over there, right? Don't say, oh no, there's nobody, go back to this. Use it. Use that as part of the story. Easy as that, right? Trust that your players will get on track if you give them enough information. Trust that your GM is not trying to screw you over all the time. I mean, do lots of PCs die in my game? Yes, because I play old school games. It happens all the time. I am not, I do not hold back, right? But I also don't intentionally go out trying to kill them, right? I want them to succeed, and I allow the story to go where they lead it. And there you go. I mean, that's basically my thoughts on trust. What do you guys think about that? Like, do you think that I'm kind of overboard and maybe you run all these systems and you're like, no, that's not true? Maybe it's just what I see, just how I see it and how I'm interpreting it. And also, I feel like I'm interpreting it from the position of somebody who's thinking about somebody who started off brand new. I mentioned this when I did my learning to play OSR the old school way, and I mentioned that in both examples of play in the BX book, a PC dies. And that sets expectations, right? You might say, well, it's super harsh, right? Actually, Down the Heap podcast was just talking about it, and they were like, wow, it's 2 people die in that expedition. That's pretty harsh. They're just trying to teach you that, PCs will die, and they just want to make it clear that does happen. And I think that's really important. So setting expectations and then allowing them to move forward, trusting the players are going to do something interesting, trusting they will get on track. They will do the things that are right because they want the adventure to happen, right? If we see the weirdo, we know that's the person we're supposed to go adventure. I mean, assuming you can do it, right? You give them enough clues. You should know that they're the person they should go to, right? So they will get there eventually. And you don't have to force their hand. In most cases. I always say that in most cases because, sometimes you just gotta. And again, if you play 3 sessions and they're not going anywhere near the main plot and things are getting really thrown off and you really feel like I wanted to run this, you can just have a discussion out of game and just be like, hey guys, remember that you went to the city here to kill Strahd, and you like started a farm. Like, kind of, I get that that's cool and you want to do that, but like ultimately, can we get back to killing Strahd at some point? And that's basically it. I mean, he's got to go that way, but and then just trust to let them do it. So, hopefully that was interesting. Like I said, let me know what you think. Go ahead and subscribe here if you do not already, guys, and ring the bell. You get notifications. I didn't make a graphic for you because I just signed up. I'm on Twitter now at Bandit's Keep. So if you want to tweet at me, I'm going to try to use that to communicate because I think that's a pretty good system. And we'll go from there. Anyways, I will see you next time.